yourself.
My name is Pearlie Craft Dove. I'm a Greater Baby, a long-term resident. Okay. My name is Pearlie Dove, a Greater Baby, a long-time resident of the city of Atlanta. My family, like many families in Atlanta, started in the old Fourth Ward. And when we had to move because of a great fire in 1917, and as you know, a lot of the land was destroyed, they decided to branch out. And fortunately, my aunties were assigned to the old Ashby Street School. Without cars, they needed transportation, so they wanted to move so they could be in walking distance. I was in the first grade. I was 5 years old in 1926. One of the most interesting things that happened that Atlanta is not aware of generally is the fact that when I arrived in that September, the school had been set on fire. And as a result of that, it was charred. The result was because Ashby Street and Hunter Street were the breaking points of segregation in Atlanta, that area. And as the whites had to move further down Ashby Street toward Fox, which was moving toward Bankhead, that way of retaliation when they gave the school to blacks was to set it on fire. I won't tell the story of what happened to us in terms of how they scattered up, but just a little incident. I went to Booker T. Washington High School in the first grade because the principal said the first grade students, the first place that we could go as a class was to E.A. Ware School. I think you might know it up there. It's near the University of Simpson. And to walk from Ashby and Hunter Street with no kind of a cover over the terrain, he thought it would just be devastating. So he said he would find a place for us to have our class. The most interesting thing back that was I was in the first grade when they installed the signature of Booker T. Washington High School. That was the replica of the statue of Booker T. Washington High. I will move on because I think we want to get into some of the other things. After you've been here 93 years, it's really kind of hard. But I want to start with the civil rights movement, and I may come back to some of things because this is what you wanted me to talk about. Fortunately, the Atlanta University system and the community are interwoven, and one impacts the other. The one thing that happened as a result of the civil rights movement was the fact that as a group, some of us felt that the civil rights movement should be on skates, and there were others who felt that that was going too fast. So as a result, we had camps among our people. One of the star characters was C.A. Scott, who was the editor of the only daily paper we had. And most of the younger people felt that his conservative viewpoint was not being spread through the community. So as a result, one of the things that came out of the Atlanta University Center movement was the establishment of another paper, which you know today as the Inquirer. Many of the professors at Morehouse and Clark and AU were instrumental with Jesse Hill, who was a civic lead at that time, and they started the Inquirer as an answer to those people who wanted to move more quickly and to have other viewpoints. I remember that some of the students at Clark College, David Stanley, who majored in English, and Ernest Farr, were young students who worked with Jesse Hill. And fortunately, I also taught John Smith, because the Morehouse boys who were studying to be teachers, most of them took their methods course at Clark. And John was one of the students that I taught. And we have remained friends through the years. And I've seen his paper grow, and I've seen many people who started, who went on to do other things. Now, counter to the Inquirer very shortly after that. We had Mr. Clayton, who started The Voice. So it's very interesting as the white community was reducing the number of papers, and we only have one paper, which was the merged Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and we have 3 papers that are still functioning from that particular movement, that is the Inquirer. There is The Voice, and there are a lot of others that aren't as prominent, like the Rolling Stones. So we can say that as a result of Atlanta, I think there's one very other interesting story. Many people ask, did you ride with the Freedom Ride? They don't understand there are so many components, and there were many people that you don't see their names, or they don't have statues, and they don't have this. But I would like to tell the story just about a student. I will not call his name because he's still living. On Boulevard, many of you may not know, they are still standing, some apartments.
Getting too loud up there.
Somebody turned on the TV or the radio.
You can hear it in here.
And at that time, the persons who kept those apartments, I guess you would call them caretakers, they were given a unit in the apartments where they stayed as the caretaker. Well, this young boy went to David T. Howard High School, and of course he had been taught about all of these great benefits. He did not discuss it with his teachers. He did not discuss it with his father, but he marched over to Grady High School to fill out the papers to transfer from David T. Howard. Of course, the principal was very aware of where blacks lived in that community. When he asked the young man his address, and he gave him address, he said, "Are you sure you live there?" Because it was only the address of the persons who stayed there, the young boy. The principal found the man who was the owner and asked him, and he said, "Oh yes, say that is my caretaker's son." Immediately, guess what he did? He fired the young man's father. Well, as a result, not only did he lose his housing, he lost his job. And that is when Jesse Hill said, if we are really going to make sure that these people who tried to help us are protected, he called together those parents who worked for the government, doctors, entrepreneurs, and so forth. And he had a meeting at what was called then Stone Hall on Morris Brown's campus. It is now called Fountain Hall. So many of us went to the meeting, and one of the young ladies' father, he was a counselor for AU Center. Her name was Madeline Nix, and she won't mind me calling her name. But in order for Madeline Nix to go to Brown High, when she was about 5 blacks among 700,